Since we don't have a lot of time and we don't want to strain your attention even more, we will get straight to the questions. My first question would be for Mr. Berg. How can we overcome flawed market incentives? Often companies have the incentive of having speed and prioritizing it before quality, which means that they would try to bring something out quickly and then patches would follow, and so it wouldn't really be security in the post-math rather than in the design.
I think I've been told that this is the fun part now of the, but I think this topic is not a fun topic, to be honest, and therefore it's quite tough to answer. What I see is maybe 2 or 3 years ago, we saw cybersecurity is a nice to have, was a nice to have topic, and especially me talking for the whole industry. I have over 2,600 companies in Germany you're representing. What we saw the last maybe 18 months is a big change in cybersecurity and awareness. Even the top management is very, very familiar with the topic. And we had a discussion a couple of weeks ago and we asked the companies, how many companies are attacked in the last year? And maybe guess, it was 88% of all companies are attacked the last 12 months. And this is not fun anymore. This is really not fun anymore. And if you see what happened in this industry, we already asked, how much money do you spend? How much percentage of your IT spending is invested in IT security? And when I give you the number, it was in Germany, it was roughly 7%, and we encourage everyone to spend between 15 and 20%. I think this is the number we at Bitkom and BDI, we say this, you should invest. You see larger companies invest more percentage-wise than smaller companies, but it's so many people are attacked. That means, therefore, it's not fun anymore. It is a real topic, it's a very important topic, and we heard it all the day, or during the day, that is super important. And what you see as well is maybe 2, 3 more topics. You see this security by design approach, that you see that it gets in hardware and software, it's included, and you see it's much more important, and many more questions. And the other topic is the ease of use of software. And what we all know, if it is not ease of use, your people don't use it anymore, don't use it the right way. They find other solutions, they use WhatsApp for other stuff. And this is something we see as well. It has to be ease of use. And maybe what we had, the last topic, it was discussed maybe two rounds before, there was a discussion about zero trust. And I'm really impressed by the US government, where they said, okay, zero trust by end of 2024 was what I've heard, that was 2024. This is a big step, and this is a big achievement, because not only the external firewall, an internal firewall as well, because what we saw as well is that over the half of all attacks coming from internals, not from externals. And this is maybe how I see this, and there's a big change in mind, it's a big change in the whole management teams, and this is very, very good development. That's more or less what I'm seeing.
Thank you so much for those words, which already are really important, like zero trust, but also insider threats, which need to be addressed throughout companies. If we continue about the market flaws and that idea, is there also a market flaw perhaps coming from users which want rather usability than security? And on that point, I'd like to ask Sven to share his insights.
Let me clarify first something about the Cyber Innovation Hub, because I'm pretty sure you will be requesting me after this show here about cybersecurity products. We deal with every digital problem of our soldiers. Cyber is just a minimal part of that, first of all. So regarding users, we're talking directly to soldiers and about their problem that they have on the battlefield and so on. And to be very honest to you guys, cyber is not the main problem at all. Yeah? So they have really problems on the battlefield, analyzing data, getting clarification about the opponent as well. So it's about values and functionalities, basically. Cybersecurity, it's not a really big issue. For sure, secure by design is always part of it, but it's not the main driver of innovation. So I think that's the big problem. And second, we should not blame the user, to be very honest. So I'm from Berlin, I'm now in Munich, and I'm a single guy, so I would download a dating app basically, and not asking about cyber and data privacy at all. I'm talking about and thinking about functionalities. So, and that's a big difference in the mindsets. So, and I can call you all cybersecurity guys, please try to understand the user. He's in the driver's seat, it's not you. And I think this is a very cultural issue as well in the cybersecurity community. I'm since 20 years in the cybersecurity company and then cybersecurity environment, and then I left because I think there are much broader topics for the end users than cybersecurity.
Yes, security needs to be as easy and seamless as possible. I think there was the whole thing about how secure passwords are being managed and with special characters, and in the end, the conclusion came that it's better to have just long words which are easily memorable rather than have complicated passwords that nobody can remember, or it's even better to use than password managers. But since we've already mentioned usability, we have mentioned zero trust already a couple of times today, and also that Google was one of the first companies to pioneer this approach. So now as we have Jochen on this panel, perhaps he can share how that road started and how how you're implementing it currently. And to broaden the question, I would ask also, what are the latest achievements in security by design in the hardware and in the software industries, and where do you see more need for research and development?
Yeah, thank you. So indeed, I would consider zero trust as one of the biggest achievements in security in the past few years. Looking back more than 10 years ago, Google was suffering an attack from a nation-state backed attacker. And at that point, instead of just fixing the vulnerabilities that were used by that attacker, we took an approach and took a step back and redesigned our system to this, what we now call zero trust. So the idea is that instead of relying on a firewall, on a perimeter to decide who you trust and who you don't trust, you trust nobody. But everybody who wants to access your systems has to authenticate themselves, and they have to authenticate the hardware they're using to communicate with the system. And fast forwarding to today, right, like where during the pandemic, we were forced all to quickly move to working from home. This is a setup now that works for all Googlers, right? Like where we have machines at home. We're not relying on a VPN, but we can directly continue to work in the zero trust environment. And so I'm also really proud that we are now rolling out this technology to more and more users. It's part of the Google Workspace and cloud offering, where you can support scenarios like bring your own device without having to rely on VPN or having to trust each and every endpoint. But I think zero trust is also more than that, right? So you can also look at setups where you have different microservices, even in different clouds, talking to each other, where you want to have this kind of zero trust. Or looking at the web browser, Chrome, which I'm working on, we're also employing a zero trust systems there, where we're sandboxing untrusted content from the web away from the privileged browser process to secure the user. Right? So I think zero trust is really, it's a keyword that encompasses a lot of security innovation.
Are there any trade-offs in implementing zero trust or security by design more broadly? Or is that a hurdle that's kind of slowing down things?
So, I mean, as I said, right, like it was something that we started more than 10 years ago. So certainly that was a long stretch. And so I wouldn't say it is easy. However, if you nowadays start from scratch, right, you start with security by design, I think incorporating zero trust is actually not much of a hurdle, right? And then for me as an end user, it's actually easier, right? Like I don't have to install a VPN. My system administrator doesn't have to worry about me using maybe an outdated operating system or something, but this is all automatically checked, right? So part of the zero trust assumption is that my machine also has to prove that it's running up-to-date software, that I have a screen lock configured and so on. So I believe that actually good security really should be invisible, right? As you said, the user in the case of myself, I want to work, right? Like I don't want to deal with complicated login sessions. And so really good security should not get in my way, but it should support me in what I'm trying to achieve.
Thank you. Now we've talked about technology. Let's move to talk about the human element. And Mr. Schneider, we would talk also about the organizational culture. And if you have to oversee large organizations, what is the role of employees in an organization's cybersecurity? And how do you establish good organizational culture and a sufficient level of cyber hygiene in large-scale organizations that you work for?
First of all, I would say the employees is the crucial role. At Allianz, they are working 150,000 employees, 150,000. But before I answer the question with cybersecurity and employees and cyber hygiene, I would say, what is the real problem? Because sometimes I have the feeling we are not discussing the real problem. The real problem is not that we invented the cyberspace. Yeah, we invented it, and when you are in the cyberspace, it's no problem. But we connected the cyberspace with the analog world. And when something is going wrong in the cyberspace, it has effects that is something goes wrong in the analog world, because we connected both. Yeah? And this is, for me, the real problem, and therefore I buy in a little bit in this direction. Cybersecurity is crucial, yeah, it's really crucial, because you cannot allow, because I'm only discussing now business, when an application, a business application crashes, each and every business guy is saying, oh, what is my reputational risk, my operational risk, my financial risk, my legal risk when this is crashing. So it's very important for the business when an application is crashing, yeah? Doesn't matter which root cause. So how we connect now the analog world with the digital world? We connect it via employees, via people, nothing else. We connect it via people. And therefore, each and everybody has to get then an employee, an identity, and access rights. So everybody knows here in the room, identity access management is number one when you are starting a cybersecurity. But and now cultural change, and we need this cultural change. I have not only access rights, but I have also access responsibilities when I go in. Of course, a sysadmin has much more responsibility. He has not only rights, but responsibilities. And this is, for me, the crucial point, how we make it happen, that it's not only access rights and access responsibilities. And then, okay, we have to make it with technology as convenient as possible. And my dream would be when the employees are saying, I will not go in the cyberspace without multi-factor authentication. I want to have it. And you have to bring it from the technology. And when the 150,000 would say, I will not go in the systems, I promise you, we would have huge investments to do to solve this problem for the whole company.
You said, I'm surprised, you said, if the machine crashes, your biggest problem. I think there are a few companies or a few people who would be very interested in your data as well. Don't you think so?
Of course.
I personally, I'm very interested, to be honest.
Yeah, of course. But then also then this application is crashes when you are...
It's not a crash, I just said...
Yeah, you steal it, yeah, of course. Yeah, of course.
I think isn't this the most important thing, the most critical issue? If Allianz gets maybe losing all the data, including financial data, including accounts, everything?
Of course, when our Active Directory is crashing, we have a huge, because no application is running anymore. When our data is stolen, no application can do a job, and we have a huge reputational risk, and for a lot of applications, huge. So therefore, no doubt, zero trust, and also not only the tech companies going in this direction. Yes, we have to check each and every access to the data, whether it's a legitimate access or not. Therefore, this thinking that you cannot trust the parameter is also coming more and more in the, not only in the tech company, but the normal business, I would say.
You mentioned not only access privilege, but also access responsibility. And the people in the company who have the largest responsibility are CEOs.
Yeah. And a little bit for the fun factor. We said, okay, a very critical point is in cyber hygiene, of course, email. Yeah? We invest a lot that no malware coming via email, but you never know, and the hacker found ways. Therefore, we are doing training and phishing campaigns. And this pays off, yeah? When you are regularly training all the 150,000 people, you see sooner or later it's getting better and better. So the responsible on the IT side is that you are really training your people and give them convenient solution that they can do secure business.
Something that I would also like to address here is as we've mentioned already earlier, the Ukraine crisis. Let's touch on it perhaps as well. And one of the larger organizations which has been impacted more considerably has also been the armed forces. Sven, could you perhaps elaborate a bit on how the Ukraine crisis has changed your work and the priorities in your organization?
So as Volker Petsch already mentioned, my work is the same basically, because you have to understand when you work for, or when you lead an innovation unit, sense of urgency is always a part of your DNA. My guys are very paranoid because we don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. There's no cozy time in the hub, to be very honest. Sounds really strange, right? But we have China, we have Russia, and so on, right? So we have to innovate for the country, for Germany, for Europe. This is what drives us, basically. And I think this needs to be part of the DNA of many citizens in Germany, to be very honest. Because I think one of the main problems in innovation is if you fail, someone blames you. This is very German. But if you don't try, you will not succeed at all. So fail fast, fail cheap. And I would call that an innovation culture, a learning culture. And if you look on venture capital, it's a completely different meaning in the US and Germany. It's in Germany called Risikokapital. It sounds already dangerous. Yeah. In the US, it's venture. It's more adventurous. Yeah. So it's a mindset topic. And you can throw as much money as you like into the system. You cannot buy culture with money. And culture is the game changer. Because having not a right culture is the gatekeeper for everything. And I think some guy also mentioned, we have all the solutions in place. They're available basically. But we can't purchase them somehow. I'm not looking to Koblenz, yeah? But
Thank you so much, Sven.
I like to add what the Ukraine conflict for me or for our organization, what we learned, you can now do some things you never have done before. For example, in our EDR tool, we can do now an automatic rollout. Yeah, not testing everything before in each and every operating entity. We roll it out globally. And nobody is discussing this anymore, that this is possible or not. Or another example, I always said we have to monitor all our different Active Directory in real time. Yeah? And now, also the admins are accepting now, we monitor it now in real time, each and every Active Directory. So you see, you can now do things we dreamed since years in cybersecurity.
But will it persist, do you think? Or will it persist? Will it go on? Or is it just like an immediate reaction, which will then again turn into less diligence and negligence? And
Yeah, because in the mindset, it is now a change in the mindset how vulnerable we are. And nobody thought about before Ukraine how fast everything can be changed, yeah, and the business is stopping, yeah. And we have operations in Ukraine, we have operations, or we had operations in Russia, and therefore you see immediately how fast the thinking changed, also in the business. It's very important, it's not anymore an IT stuff, because now they are discussing more and more secure business. And now you are an enabler for the business, and you are not a security tax anymore.
Maybe you can give me some evidence, but I've heard from a few companies was, since the 24th of February, the attacks, the attacks growth was by 5 to 10%, 50 to 100%. It went from 3,000 to 30,000 attacks per day, and one company asked, maybe, is it the same for you? Is it the same with the Allianz? You see an increase of attacks in the last couple of months, or is it the
decrease.
same? A decrease.
Decrease. Yeah.
Decrease. Interesting.
How do you explain that? Or Sven, sorry. How do you explain the decrease? Is it?
I guess there is the energy is going in another direction, and the normal attacks you can manage easily, yeah, and therefore we see that, so to speak, the normal attacks, I would say, which you can block very easily, are going down, yeah.
Apologies, we have a bit veered off from the topic, so we'll go back now to security by design, which another big topic is open source software, the security in the design, but also in the maintenance of open source software. Because often, as with the Log4j vulnerability, it just hasn't been maintained anymore, or just like a few people who have been doing it in as a pet project. And so I'd like to ask Jochen, as well as Google is also a pioneer in open source software. How can we make that better? Is there perhaps what we haven't mentioned today is also the role of the state? Can the state do something better to provide us with more security by design in open source software?
Yeah, it's actually, as an open source developer myself, it's very important to me to make sure that we're not putting the blame on an individual open source project, right? Like many of those projects are actually, as you said, right, they're run by people in their free time. And so it is us who choose to use that software and build industry scale software with that we promise to meet certain security standards. And so we can't expect those people that are contributing to open source software to just on their own meet the same security standards. But it's on us, both as companies using open source software, but also states using open source software, to ensure that open source software has adequate tooling to achieve security. They have adequate funding to achieve security, right? And we're living in a very interconnected world.
Time to
right. Yeah. Funding is like both resources, but also the time, right? And I mean, you mentioned cyber, right? And you can train your own staff, but cyber really means that we're living in a very interconnected world, right? And so you can train your own staff, but there are many components, the so-called supply chain security matters here, right? And so I think it's up on both the public and the private sector to actually increase funding for open source initiatives, right? I think we have, for example, here in the European Union, a lot of leading regulation in cybersecurity, but also resilience, but we don't have an adequate level of funding for open source security yet. And I think that's something where we can really improve.
Perhaps also on a European level, right? To think at the bigger scale, not just individual countries, and then also even further, perhaps in transatlantic community.
Right. Again, I think it's not like you wouldn't invest in open source out of an altruistic instinct, but really it is part of your supply chain, it is part of your security threat model, and I think only with that mindset we can start funding open source to the point to which we already now rely on open source for our security.
Sven, did you still want to add something earlier? No? Good.
But
yes.
I would say this is a great idea because we discussed so many times today that we have to collaborate. And open source security would be an ideal way that we collaborate each and everybody, cross-border, cross countries, cross business, to do and invest time and money to build open source security. This would be, then it's not a business model, but we can, everybody can join this community. I would say a great idea.
But I mean, you mentioned earlier, right? Like if your servers are crashing, it is a business problem, right? And so assuming that at least some of the software has somewhere open source in its supply chain, it is already a business case for you to improve security there.
At this point, we would like to conclude this panel. Thank our speakers again that they joined us and delivered us such an interesting and engaging conversation. Thank you so much.